Welcome back. I'm now joined by the well-known Times of India and Telegraph columnist Swapan Dasgupta, the editor of The Pioneer and BJP MP Chandan Mitra, the founding editor of The Wire.in Siddharth Vardarajan, the well-known Asian Age columnist Akar Patel, and Narendra Modi's biographer and author of Narendra Modi, The Man, The Times, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Swapan Dasgupta, in an article you wrote yesterday, you said of the media, no stone has been left unturned to attack the government and tarnish Modi's image. Even the pretense of neutrality has been discarded. It's now open season on the BJP. Those are exceptionally strong words. What's the evidence to back up this claim?
Well, the evidence, Karan, is available to you each morning, particularly to you and me who mainly read English language newspapers. I guess when I talk about the media, I may be generalizing in so far as there may be other publications which don't fall into that. But I'm using the media here as a shorthand for both the English language publications, by and large, and for the television channels who appear to have decided that they constitute the real opposition to Mr. Modi and that the time is now opportune for them to go sledgehammer at him. I think the evidence is quite is apparent. I mean, throughout the beginning from the church attacks which happened during the pelting of stones at certain churches, which happened prior to the Delhi assembly elections, to now the warm-up before the Bihar elections, when almost every single issue has been blown out of proportion, turned into front page news with headlines which are so suggestive that they leave very little to the imagination. Okay. If you want, we can talk at detail about particular instances, but I think it would suffice to say that the tone of this is that here is a bunch of complete ignoramuses who are running the show, who are bigoted, who are communal, who have no idea of what constitutes India, and these interlopers must at the first available opportunity be got rid of. That's the overwhelming tone of it, and I think any reader who subscribes to any of these publications or watches some of these channels would come to the more or less the same conclusion as me.
Siddharth Vardarajan, let me take one particular example. I'll take the example of Vasundhara Raje Scindia, Sushma Swaraj and Shivraj Singh Chauhan episodes when they happened and were front page and headline news on television for almost 2 weeks non-stop this June, July. At that time, many people felt that perhaps the media was targeting the three. It made, people said, little effort to balance their coverage. Now, would you support Swapan's argument that that's one instance where perhaps the media tilted entirely in one direction and discarded neutrality?
I don't think so. I think Swapan is painting a rather exaggerated picture of media coverage. If you look at today's headlines, for example, you have front page news given to Prime Minister Modi's rather anodyne and pointless statement about how India is home to many civilizations. It's a kind of statement that ordinarily would, it's a motherhood and apple pie kind of statement. But the fact is that newspapers said, okay, fine, this is something the PM has said. They made it a headline story. Can you point to editorials in newspapers which have said, which have characterized the Modi government in the way that Swapan has said the media is doing it? You can't. I think the problem with Swapan's analysis, or rather I should say the problem with this government's attitude, is that they just don't have the stomach to take any criticism. And this problem is compounded by their unwillingness to respond to points which come up. In any democracy, when issues enter the public domain, it's incumbent upon those in power, those in authority, to present their views, to clear the air, to speak with some degree of authority. What you have instead is complete chaos.
Okay.
Those whose voices actually count in government, primarily the Prime Minister, is silent. Those whose word carries some weight, like Arun Jaitley, speak after 10 days. The Home Minister of this country speaks after 2 weeks, and when he speaks, of course, he criticizes the very people that the media has gone after. Like, his comment on VK Singh was pretty direct. So are you going to fault the media for highlighting what VK Singh said, or are we going to say that, well, Rajnath Singh endorsed the media's general sense of distaste at the way in which this government and his fellow travellers are presenting public issues?
Chandan Mitra,
So I think Swapan overstates the case, quite frankly.
Chandan Mitra, let me pick up on a point that you heard from Siddharth Varadarajan, which is that if the media is making an argument against ministers, perhaps targeting them, perhaps in fact being unfair, surely when those accusations of bias and corruption are raised, it's incumbent on the ministers to come forward and present their side of the story. So to go back to that example I took, neither Vasundhara Raje Scindia nor Sushma Swaraj gave any interviews. They made no effort to counter what the media was saying. The media approached them endlessly, but they were silent. So if the media then looks as if it's tilted and one-sided, is it the fault of the media, or does the fault lie with the fact that chief ministers and foreign ministers who should and are able to speak refuse to talk?
Well, Karan, before I come to the point, let me just want to add one point, that Swapan's article that you refer to was published in the Pioneer, of which he is a columnist. I wish you had mentioned that. But that apart, on your what you say out and explain. Now, I have been noticing another tendency on the part of the media that every time something happens, the opposition parties, particularly the Congress and the media, English media as Swapan has defined it, kind of join hands and demand that the Prime Minister must come out and speak. Let the Prime Minister speak. Unless the Prime Minister speaks, nothing can be clarified. The Prime Minister has spoken on occasion, but people don't seem to be satisfied till the Prime Minister addresses a point by point press conference kind of thing, where the idea is the Prime Minister can be, you can kind of then hold him to many other issues and basically run him down. Somehow, it is a question of what is the way in which the media is approaching the whole thing. There seems to be a great deal of visceral pleasure that the media, this section of the media gains out of every small incident, blowing these things out of proportion and holding the Prime Minister personally responsible for these occurrences. So yes, I think that it is inescapable that there seems to be an agenda that is being pursued, and it is getting sharper and sharper by the day. There is a sense of frustration that the media has not been able to dent Mr. Modi's popularity.
Akar Patel, Swapan Dasgupta actually goes one step further in that article, and Chandan is absolutely right in saying that in fact it is a Pioneer article. I apologize, I thought I'd mentioned that in the first question, I overlooked to do so. This is the additional point Swapan makes. He says the media chases ministers and MPs not because they feel obliged to understand what important functionaries feel or believe. Rushing after political functionaries with a camera and tape recorder has become akin to throwing a banana skin in their path and hoping they will slip. In other words, he suggests the media is guilty of deliberately seeking to trip and foot fault ministers and MPs.
I would accept what he says. I think the media has become quite unhinged in the last 4 or 5 years. We became very successful with the rape in Delhi and the rise of the Aam Aadmi Party. I think the media has taken it upon itself more to comment than to report. I think also the rise of Times Now and the success of Mr. Goswami has led to the proliferation of a kind of wild, angry debate in the evenings, which many other channels have chosen to follow. I think on the larger point of prejudice in the English media, and I think we should remember that it's a very small part of the media, that in the top 10 newspapers of this country, only one happens to be an English newspaper, and most papers tend to be a conservative. If we look at the English newspapers, let's just run through them. The Times of India has Mr. Dasgupta himself, it's got Gurcharan Das, it's got Chetan Bhagat defending Mr. Modi. The Express has Tavleen Singh, it's got Surjit Bhalla, it's got MJ Akbar, it's got Bibek Debroy, Meghnad Desai. There is no shortage of people who are defending this government and are fond of Mr. Modi. I think one of the successes of Mr. Modi has been to ensure that to be seen as balanced in this in a commentary, one must be neutral to the poison of Hindutva. I think that if anything, the debate has moved to the right because of his electoral success. So I will not accept the broad argument that the media is biased against the BJP. I will accept the fact that in the last 5 years, we have tended to become slightly off balance and have been blowing up minor things to the detriment of the government in power, whether it has been the UPA or in this case the NDA.
In fact, on that particular point, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, Swapan Dasgupta says, quoting Arun Jaitley, that the media is making governance impossible for Modi by shifting focus from development and economic growth to old-style identity politics and by what he calls triggering a backlash of unfulfilled expectations. Now, that sentence almost makes the media sound like a saboteur.
Well, I don't think that the media has so much of power. It's probably very... Mr. Jaitley is overestimating our strength, that we have the capacity to actually trip the progress and development of this country. So that is completely wrong. The basic problem is that there is this sentiment within this present ruling establishment of being in agreement with them completely, more than 100%. You're either with them 100% plus or you're not with them. If you criticize any policy of the government, that does not mean that you're anti-national. This is virtually, it's very similar to the kind of animosity which Mrs. Gandhi displayed towards the media, which Rajiv Gandhi, when things started going bad for him, he tried to display. So there have been occasions that wherever you have had democratically elected leaders, things not going correctly for them, they have to find a fall guy. So the fall guy is usually the media, because you can very well say that the media is going and side up with the opposition.
So you're suggesting that Swapan's article is a reflection of a deeper inner angst that the BJP feels?
No, I think purely as a journalist, while Swapan is completely entitled to his view of being supportive of the government, he should also allow that there can be other people in the fraternity who can be opposed to certain policies of the government. There are a large number of people within the media who are absolutely balanced, to look at things from an issue to issue basis. There have, we can count the number of, Akar was absolutely correct that on several papers and platforms, even Swapan shares space with probably the most critical of writers. So that does not mean that those newspapers are fundamentally opposed to the policies of the Modi government.
Swapan Dasgupta, I want to give you the last word before I change subjects and switch to what Amit Shah has said. You began by saying that the media looks upon the new government and its ministers and MPs as people lacking in cosmopolitanism, people who are ignorant, people who are unsophisticated. Do you really believe the media has such a biased, blinkered, prejudiced view? Or were you overstating your case to make a point?
I think they do. I think a very no, I think by and large, I'm not talking here incidentally about the editorial pages of the newspapers, which I agree do have much more circumspect, even critical, supportive articles, but that's on one level. But I'm talking about pure reportage. I mean, take a very, very recent example. The case of the Haryana Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar. I believe he gave an interview to two newspapers that day. The one newspaper, which is the Hindustan Times, had a pretty, I would say, not a very exciting report on various development programs which had been launched by the Haryana government after, and what had been successful after 1 year, etc. The Indian Express report, on the other hand, was nothing else but beef, beef and more beef. And the subsequent day, after Mr. Khattar gave his clarification, and the Express didn't agree it had erred, but it actually reproduced what Mr. Khattar had said in Hindi. And you could clearly see that that was a really contested translation of what actually took place. I will give you another example. Take the case, Mr. Vardarajan's own website, which is a very interesting website because it contains a large number of articles which are critical of the government, and it gives you a window as to what people who don't like Mr. Modi think, and it's a useful platform in that sense. He had a thing about the board of Prasar Bharati, and he said 4 BJP cronies appointed. Now, Mr. Sunil Alag is not a BJP crony. I mean, I would love to have sort
But
of...
you're quarreling over something like
described him as
use
a
of
voter
language,
supporter.
surely.
No, the point is it's the tone. It's the tone. It's the tone.
Okay.
The tone is such. We wouldn't put Mr.
Let me
Varadarajan as
stop
being
you
members
then.
of various governing bodies under the previous government. So we wouldn't call him a toady or a crony or something like that.
Can I respond?
Neither for that
Let
matter
me stop you there. You've made your point at elaborate length. It's only fair that Siddharth Lal should have a chance to respond.
And K.M. Munshi as
Swapan, one example is sufficient. I want others to have a chance to talk. You can't hog airtime too much. Siddharth, are you guilty of using words like crony that suggest a tone that is...
Karan, I need to respond.
Yes, I'm giving you a chance.
Karan,
I'm giving you a chance. Go ahead.
yeah. First of all, Swapan is wrong. The word that was used, the term that was used in the wire was BJP fellow travelers. And the article that he doesn't like begins with the line, taking a leaf from the Congress party's book. Okay, so the story that he mentions identifies the Congress fellow travelers.
What's the headline?
Whom Manish Tiwari placed on the Prasar Bharati board.
Gentlemen,
And the story drew
let's
attention
keep this civil.
to readers. BJP, the headline was, I have it in front of me. It says BJP fellow travelers. The word crony or toady is never used. This is something that is in your imagination, Swapan.
All right.
The word uses fellow traveler.
I think we've sorted that out. Let's leave that aside. Let's come back now to the second important issue I want to raise today, and it happens to be, in fact, this comment made by Amit Shah. Akar Patel, I'll put it to you. Amit Shah said over the weekend that the perception of growing intolerance is only limited to Lachan's Delhi. In other words, he's suggesting, without saying it in so many words, that it's limited to English-speaking middle-class liberals. It doesn't apply across the board in the country. It doesn't apply to those who speak other languages than English. Is Amit Shah correct, or is he factually wrong?
It's a sweeping statement, and I don't think much ought to be made of it. But if we were to take it seriously, Mr. Shah ought really to address it to Mr. Jaitley, who has been saying for a very long time now that the disturbances that have been caused from within the Hindutva movement have led to a shift away from a policy, and the shift has happened because the national interests have turned to things like cows and murders, and the national interest has turned because most of us tend to be interested in it. So I think that to say that this is just a concern of a minority, and I mean this in the demographic sense, is wrong. I think that many of us feel concerned at the tone and the actions of many in the Hindutva party. I think the problem is that you've got a BJP president and a prime minister who seem to be almost permanently in campaign mode, and I think the levels of rhetoric that they used to use in Hindutva terms only in the pre-poll sense are now being used almost throughout the year. We've had a government in power 15-16 months. We've got Bihar now, we've got UP in a year and a half. I don't see where this is going to end. I think that the BJP has taken it upon itself, especially the Prime Minister and the BJP president, to continue with the kind of intense rhetoric that they have indulged in. I think it's up to them to tone it down. I think that the rest of the country will shut up and move on to something else.
Chandan
The
Mitra,
stupid Indian team, for instance.
Chandan Mitra, let me quote what Amit Shah said. He says, there are many among the writers who signed an appeal during the Lok Sabha elections not to elect Mr. Modi. Does the fact that they signed such an appeal invalidate their protests when they're complaining about a mood of growing intolerance in the country? Does it raise serious questions that in fact their protest against intolerance is somehow ideological and motivated by a dislike of the BJP? I mean, is it fair to make that jump? Because people have a right to sign appeals against voting people to power.
Yeah, sure, I do accept that. But then, I don't know whether it's ideological. I think it has something to do with the freebies and the loaves and fishes and crumbs of office that they were habituated to receiving under the Congress regime, which have obviously stopped. So they are greatly discomforted by all this, and that probably explains their kind of sudden anger and this, I would say, ridiculous sight of people returning some worthless certificate that they have in their possession. So I think there is something that people in this particular part of Delhi, and not a geographical sense, is not really in a geographical sense, it is a mindset. It is a mindset that detests the BJP, which hates Mr. Modi, which has been unsuccessful in preventing him from coming to power. It cannot stop the BJP from winning election after election, and so they are in somewhere kind of so frustrated that they are latching on to any event that may cause any embarrassment to the government and milking it dry. And you step out of Delhi and step out of the pernicious influence of certain media organizations and go to the south, travel to the east, and you will find nothing of this is relevant there.
Well, just a moment. I'm going to stop you there. He says, step out of Delhi, travel to the east, travel to the west, you find nothing of this there. Something over 40, pretty close to 45 writers have returned their awards. They come not just from Delhi, from UP, Uttarakhand, Karnataka,
Yes.
Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Kashmir, Kerala, Tamil Nadu.
Writing in all languages
Writing
besides
in all
English.
languages.
Besides English.
So is Chandan right to disparage them in the language and tone that he used?
You know, I think it's very unfortunate. I, for one, would not agree with this form of protest, but I think everyone is entitled to their form of protest. I also do not think that you can actually reduce protest or the right to protest or dissent as a commodity which is available under the PDS, that you can use it only once, that because you have signed a memorandum opposing the election of Mr. Modi as the Prime Minister does not mean that for the rest of the tenure you cannot protest on any of the other policies or any of the decisions of the government. It's very unfair. Everyone is entitled to protesting at the point or on issues which they think is important. The point is that over the last year and a half there has been a growing sense that dissent is becoming more and more risky. Let's not get into this issue of crumbs which Chandan is talking about, because then we'll find that the similar narrative gets used all the time. It was used by the NDA previously when the United Front government was there, and subsequently also. So I think it's, you know, we have to look beyond and actually see that let us not have a persecution complex. Let on get with the business. Mr. Modi, after all, let's remember, did not get a mandate for a major amount of issues on which there is so much of controversy. Let the government focus on governance issues, and it will be able to do its business properly.
Siddharth Varatharajan, I want to go back to quoting Amit Shah, because something else he said is the following. Had such incidents taken place...
I have to object.
But just a moment, Chandan, I'll come back to you, and you can happily object. The right to object is the right that as journalists we respect. It's tantamount to the right to dissent, and regardless of whether you like me or not and think I'm prejudiced, your right to object I will always uphold. But let me go to Siddharth first. I want to quote something Amit Shah said. Had such incidents taken place because of the BJP, RSS or VHP, then why are there no protests in Gujarat, MP, Rajasthan and Goa? But there are. 11 Sahitya Academy award-winning authors in Goa publicly protested against the Academy's silence. In addition, Mr. Shah seems to have forgotten that writers in Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Rajasthan have returned their awards. In fact, in Gujarat, Ganesh Devi has actually said he was then questioned by the intelligence agencies. So has Mr. Amit Shah simply got his facts wrong?
Yes. You know, I'm afraid this is another example of how the BJP is its worst enemy, quite frankly. And all this attempt to shift the blame onto the media just won't wash. The fact is that nobody asked Sanjeev Balian or Mahesh Sharma or Sangeet Som to go to Dadri and talk rubbish. Nobody asked Mr. Shah to make these kind of factually incorrect statements. Nobody asked Mr. Jaitley to make such a sweeping comment about writers that even a fellow traveller like Swapan Dasgupta on your program where I participated was at pains to say Jaitley, you know, overspoke. So I think that, you know, blaming the media for covering these things or criticizing them, you know, for saying that is really, you know, to miss the point. The fact is that the BJP is in power. Incidents happen. As clever politicians, they need to know how to handle things, right? And making a timely and sensible comment, responding in a way that suggests that you feel empathy towards the victim of a crime. These are standard practices that savvy politicians around the world engage in. I don't know why behavior of this kind is beyond the scope of the current government.
Okay.
What happens is that they make all kinds of outrageous comments, and that basically serves to heighten the problem, and that's exactly what we've seen. Whether it's the Dadri incident, whether it's the Haryana, the Baldagarh incident, or the statement of the Haryana Chief Minister on beef. These are not, which we were told by anonymous BJP sources that Amit Shah was constrained to, criticize him for. So don't shoot the messenger. I think the ire of
in fact,
the government
Arun
supporters should be
Jaitley has
directed
confirmed.
within.
Arun Jaitley confirmed that in fact Amit Shah did call these three gentlemen and reprimand them. He confirmed that separately, and if he reprimanded them, that would suggest that Khattar had been correctly translated by the Indian Express, not wrongly, because Mr. Jaitley wouldn't reprimand a man if the translation on the basis of which the mistake was made was wrong.
Mr. Thapar.
You've got my name correct, Mr. Dasgupta. Pray continue.
Manohar Lal Khattar wasn't part of those people. Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar wasn't reprimanded. Please, get your facts right. There were some MLAs in Uttar Pradesh who were reprimanded.
All right. Since you are better informed than me on this subject, I will accept that Mr. Khattar simply was visiting the BJP president. The others were being reprimanded. I bow to your greater knowledge.
I'm waiting for my right to dissent.
Absolutely. You have your right to dissent, to object, and to do so in whatever language you want.
No, this is another example of deliberately distorting what I said. I mean, I will. And who will translate?
Please go ahead. We're running out of time, Chandan. Please protest.
No. Yes, my protest is that I was talking about a mindset, and from there to come straight to the question of some individual writers was not correct. But let me use this opportunity to just pointedly mention the way these issues are really blown out of proportion. One Gulzar returned an award after several days, I think under peer pressure. The whole
how do you know under peer
that
pressure?
thing.
How do you know under peer pressure? That's an allegation that you're making.
Maybe under peer pressure.
Well, you didn't say maybe. You now added the word maybe. The word maybe was missing earlier.
Because he did it after several days.
He has a right to. He may need a bit of time to think about it.
Even if he is...
People don't like returning awards they've richly earned. It's a painful process. Swapan Dasgupta, let me put that issue to you. When I hear the aggressive and combative manner in which Venkaiah Naidu and Arun Jaitley have spoken against writers, when I read your own column and you talk about open season on the BJP and how the media has left no stone unturned to attack the government and Modi, I get the feeling that the BJP and its supporters have developed a feeling or a sense of victimization, that they've got a persecution complex.
Well, Karan, if somebody attacks, and these I have mentioned before in your programs, many of these are explicit political attacks. When you retaliate politically, including pointing out the political pedigree of some of the people who protested, do you call it a sense of insecurity? Do you call it a victimization complex? It cannot be one way. One person cannot just attack, and you must be, if you play politics, then you must be prepared to enter the political arena and face it. Now, I would qualify that by saying I do not include all the writers in that category, because many of the writers, as I have pointed out many times before, were protesting against the Sahitya Academy itself. And after the meeting of October 23rd, where the Sahitya Academy met and passed some resolutions, etc., etc., many of those voices have disappeared. In fact, it's remarkable that the meeting of the Sahitya Academy on 23rd was not given the prominence it was necessary, because by then the media had moved to another issue altogether. So I think rather than talk about victimization, if you say that someone is attacking you, and then Amit Shah replies saying this is the political pedigree of some of those people who attacked you, I think you should be part of the game.
All right.
You attack, you be prepared for a response. So it cannot just be victimization. No one is going to be turning the other cheek in a political battle and say, slap me as hard as you can.
Akar Patel, the truth for some and I emphasize that word for some, is that Swapan's claim that the media is biased or Amit Shah's claim that the protests are limited only to Lachan's Delhi reminds me of the way Indira Gandhi and her supporters would dismiss criticism and protests. In their time, they spoke in identical terms. Do you think the BJP realizes that they're imitating the worst of Indira Gandhi?
Not just her, I think all governments in our part of the world have very low levels of tolerance. I think if one were to look at it neutrally, the kind of coverage Mr. Modi gets, Mann Ki Baat is transmitted live, 13 episodes, all channels show it live. The coverage that they've given him when he travels abroad is unprecedented. I don't think any Prime Minister has got this kind of rave review from the media just for meeting captains of industry. I think that the problem lies on the other side, that when the Hindutva agenda comes up, people who support Hindutva expect the media to be neutral on this, but they cannot. I think that when you spread poison, when you are divisive, there will be a reaction from society. It might not be a reaction that they might like. I think that they have to swallow it.
You've written a biography of Narendra Modi. You've studied and understood the man and his personality. He comes across as supremely confident and assured, but underneath that, is he vulnerable and insecure and therefore unable to take criticism?
Well, yes, in a way, definitely there is a lot of insecurity which is underlying his basic persona. As far as his media handling is concerned, right from 2002, his media policy has been completely faulty. It's always tried to present the English media as enemy number one, trying to play up the English media versus the regional media discord. Throughout the campaign period also, he was critical of the media. After he became Prime Minister, the media was cut out from access to large parts of government. So there is a problem of his media handling, and probably now it is beginning to come back on him in some ways or the other.
Siddharth Rajan, I'm going to ask you for a short answer because I'd like Chandan to have that last word of protest. I think it's only fair and right that we should extend that courtesy to him. But Swapan in his article suggests that the rift or divide, or call it what you want, between the media and Mr. Modi will, and I'm quoting him, continue unabated till the general elections of 2019. A, very quickly, do you agree? And secondly, does that therefore mean that the relationship will progressively get worse, not better? But quickly, please.
No, I don't agree. I think a lot depends on what he does and what his government does, quite frankly. The more he focuses on constructive initiatives like the India-Africa Summit, for example, which I have praised and my website has praised, or other such initiatives, the more he will get positive media coverage. But as Akar says, if this sort of counterfeit or Hindutva contraband is smuggled aboard the agenda that people voted for, then there will be negative coverage. And if you want Hindutva, then you have to be prepared to have this negative coverage too.
Okay.
So I think the ball is entirely in Mr. Modi's court.
Although for the moment the ball is entirely in Chandan Mitra's court. Chandan, I want you to have the last word so that you can at least say that we gave you a chance to protest as much as you want and in whatever language you want.
No, I think my protest was misunderstood. I mean, what I was trying to say was that I said these issues, which have become a huge affair in Lachan's Delhi, are non-issues the moment you step out. And in response to that, I was told so-and-so writer from Karnataka, so-and-so from Meghalaya, and so-and-so from this place have protested. Now, that is not the same thing. He is deliberately misinterpreting what I am trying to say, that these things are not news. But in Delhi studios, we debate only these issues ad nauseum, and sometimes I get a feeling that the media won't be happy till there is a serious communal divide in this country. There is an attempt to generate and nurture a communal divide. Very often
I leave you with the right to raise allegations about the media, but on behalf of the media I will point out I don't think you're right. But as I said, you have a right to be wrong. Every right to be wrong, particularly when you're a guest on my show. My thanks to all my guests for joining me, and there we end this particular debate and discussion. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye, good night.
News.